Hello, and welcome to this presentation on one of my favorite topics, creating buyer-centric websites. This is me. I'm Valerie Barrow. I work as an independent marketing consultant and a professor of marketing. You may be watching this presentation today because you're one of my clients, or you could be watching because I have assigned you this video as part of one of my classes. The information in today's presentation comes from a few sources, and I wanted to start by giving credit to those sources. I've pulled a lot of this information from my own personal experience working over the years and building websites, but I've also taken some information from a book called The New Rules of Marketing and PR by David Meerman Scott. Also, a few facts, figures, and images come from an infographic that was created by Emma, an email marketing service. Let's start by talking about why you need to create a buyer-centric website. A buyer-centric website is just what it sounds like. It's a website that focuses on the wants and needs of your buyers or your customers, or even your prospective customers. Throughout this presentation, I use words like buyers, customers, and shopping, but buyer-centric websites are not just for e-commerce sites. Of course, the transaction your customer takes can be purchasing something, but it could also be, for example, making a donation if you're a nonprofit website. It could be locating a physician if you're a hospital website. It can be many different things. So as I go through the presentation, think about your business specifically and what actions you want your customers to take. Why should we focus on the buyer? Okay, for starters, the web is almost always the first place that somebody stops when they're on a shopping trip. Consumers are going to go online before spending any money to do research. Even if they wind up purchasing something in a store, they typically start the purchase process on the web. So as a business, you have the opportunity to deliver targeted information at the precise moment when someone is looking for what you have to offer. Where to start? So I have a process that I use with my clients when I'm building them a new website, a buyer-centric website. I really like this process because it allows me to get to know their business. It makes me feel confident in the work that I'm doing for them, and the client's needs are met. Basically, everybody wins. So I'm going to go through the process that I use. I start this process of developing a website by giving the client a questionnaire to fill out. This questionnaire asks the client to consider key information about the audience that the website is meant to serve. It also just provides a solid conversation starter regarding the goals and the design direction of the new site, because later I'm going to ask them a lot of questions regarding the answers that come up on this questionnaire. The questionnaire that I use is about 30 questions long, and it covers these topics: a company overview, their brand identity, the objectives of their website, their design preferences, and their SEO and online marketing objectives. Not everybody can answer all of the questions. Sometimes they actually don't know the answers, but sometimes it's because they just haven't really thought about it. So what I do after I receive back their questionnaire is I schedule a kickoff meeting so I can meet them in person. And the goal of this meeting is for me to listen and for me to ask them questions. These meetings can run 2 to 4 hours, sometimes even longer, depending on the size of the company or the size of the website that we're building. What I do is I have the client go through each of their answers. If I don't understand the answer, then I ask them questions until I do understand it. I get them to clarify what they meant until I can understand what they're saying. And then after I actually understand their answers, I'll ask them even more questions to see if there's any more information I can uncover from them. For example, I'll often learn about internal struggles at the company. You know, who in what department expects what out of this project. So I learned how to make all of those people happy too, while accomplishing all of our other goals with building the website. Or once I learned that there was a customer subset, one that we weren't planning on focusing on at all, that was actually very important to the success of the company. This part of the process is really fun for me because there's always something new to learn about their business. So, moving on in the process, I take all of the information from the questionnaire and I combine it with all of the information that I've learned in our kickoff meeting, and I move on and I write a creative brief. What a creative brief does is it takes the information from your questionnaire, it takes all the questions you asked in the kickoff meeting, it takes your interpretation of all of that, and it distills it down into only the most important information. Your goal with the creative brief is to produce a document that you could give to a complete stranger and they would totally understand the needs and goals of the project. Because a lot of times this is exactly what you're doing. You're going to give this document to the lead designer, the graphic artist, for example, and maybe she wasn't in the meeting, but you need her to create something beautiful and perfect based on what is only in this document. So again, I have a specific template that I use for the creative brief. And I'm going to walk you through some bullet points of exactly what I cover. The creative brief, I cover the background of the company, what the assignment is. I go over the objectives of the project. Remember, websites often have different objectives for different clients. Some may want to increase sales, while others are just looking to showcase their brand. I cover the primary audience for the site, and I'm giving you a little more detail here. You really have to get specific on what you want the audience to do on your website. Why are they on the website to begin with? And therefore, what is the call to action for this audience? If you have a secondary or a tertiary audience, you also want to list your calls to action for those audiences too. I make sure that the brief covers the brand personality traits, the tone and manner. To me, this means typical things like the look and feel discussion or how you want the brand to actually sound to your audience. You cover your design parameters. These are your technical specifications, and you list mandatory homepage elements. So I typically let my designers interpret the brief and create a design using their skills, but sometimes there are elements that are non-negotiable. So this is the area where I can list those things that are not open for creative interpretation. Now I'm going to go through the elements of a buyer-centric website. These are from the book, The New Rules of Marketing and PR. There are a few more listed in the book, but I picked out these items because I especially agreed with them. And I'm listing them here, and then I'm going to go through each of them individually. Develop a site personality. Photos and images tell your story. Include interactive content tools. Make feedback loops available. Make sure the site is current. And include social share buttons. Develop a site personality. Someone I know once described their friend's personality as parsley. You know parsley, it's on your plate, but it serves no purpose. It was kind of sad, but I think about that a lot because no marketing communication, especially not your website, should be parsley. It should have some identifiable personality. At this point in the process, you should already know your brand personality traits from your creative brief, so these can be worked into the site. Being able to convey the personality of your website is about consistency. Your tone of voice needs to be the same throughout the site. So you can't be silly on one page and then stuffy on another, for example. And this goes for images too. They need to be consistent. And I'll talk a little bit more about images later. What you want to do is create a personality that appeals to your buyer personas. If you're not familiar with buyer personas, I have a different video on this topic that you can watch. The next element is photos and images. As you're probably well aware, the internet has gone more and more visual over the years. You can think about Instagram or Pinterest and how popular these sites are. It's just that people flat out like looking at pictures, and there's actually a very good reason behind this. It turns out that our brains can process images faster than text. We basically think in pictures, and images appeal to the portion of the brain that processes emotions, so then images are more memorable than text. So I'm going to make a pitch here for you to do custom photography. I personally think it's very rare. Only only in very, very rare occasions can you find generic stock photos that work for your brand. I have seen it before. I've seen some people that are very good at selecting stock images, but more often they'll come across as contrived and your audience will know they are fake. I just always laugh because there's this one stock image of a woman's face, and I've seen it used with everything from Botox to day spas to urinary leaks. So you definitely don't want that to happen to your brand. In the end, if you work with a good photographer who also takes the time to know your brand, then you'll have a collection of images that you can use for years on your website, on your printed materials, on everything. So you might pay a little bit more upfront, but the cost of stock images wind up adding up anyway, and you really just get what you pay for. I have on this slide that what you really want is environmental portraits of people, and I mean that. As much as people really like looking at photos in general, they really, really like looking at photos of other people. So no matter what your product is, try to find the human element when you go to do your photography. The next element is an interactive content tool. I always try to build at least one tool on each website I create. A tool is anything that's interactive that the user can play around with, basically. This creates something sticky, and what I mean by that is it creates something that makes your user stick around the site and stay on the site for longer. Your goal when creating a tool is to engage users, to build their interest, and to move them through the sales cycle. So different tools work for different audiences, but here are some examples from websites that I've done and some interesting concepts that I've seen. You can create an interactive map. You can create a diet and exercise tracker. You can put a stock quoting chart on your site. You can make quizzes or polls. You could have a email your congressman feature, or you can put a financial calculator on there, like a mortgage calculator. People, especially younger audiences, are attracted to websites that they can interact with. And very much so if this interaction customizes their experience in some way. We don't really see audiences anymore who are just happy to read the information that you provided, so you want to really create something interactive that gets them to stick around on your website. Next is make feedback loops available. Just like your audience will want to interact with your website with tools, they're also going to want to interact directly with your business. Social media has made this two-way interaction somewhat standard, right? I mean, people expect a business to respond promptly when they post something on Facebook or Twitter. I'm sure we've all had experiences with this. They want to interact with your website in the same way. So some ways that you can allow your audience to interact with you include a simple contact us form, the ability to rate one of your products, online forums where people can talk about different topics or forums, or user reviews. Next, you're going to want to make sure that your site is current. So websites become outdated really quickly. Oftentimes you have staff that turns over, or your platform upgrades, you get new products, or your business undergoes strategic changes that require a website to be updated. So you want to stay on top of all of these changes. I recommend picking an easy-to-use content management system that allows you to make small changes rather swiftly. You want to make sure that you audit your website a few times a year to make sure that the content is updated. And also, it's a good idea to use news and blog feeds to keep the homepage fresh, because this is really good for your search engine optimization. The final element of a buyer-centric website is to include social share buttons. You've probably seen these. They're the little buttons that are on the top of a web page that allow you to share that page onto a social network. It's best if you can have these in a way that they share the individual page and not the whole website, because some users may want to only share that page or that individual product. One tip I have is to make sure that your website is using Open Graph Protocol. I won't go into the specifics on this, the technical way that it works, but it's basically metadata on your website that pulls the images and the title and the information on your page into social networks. So this is why, for example, if you were to share something on Facebook, a photo and a title would automatically populate. It's because the website is using Open Graph Protocol. Again, all these elements I pulled from the new rules of marketing and PR, and I just picked out the ones that have been the most applicable to my clients. So there are some others listed in the book if you care to read through those. So to recap, you or your business or your client, you have the opportunity to deliver targeted information at the precise moment when customers are looking for what you have to offer. And you can do this by creating a buyer-centric website. You want to get to intimately know your client or yourself if you're doing this on your own. You do this by creating a creative questionnaire, turning that into a creative brief, and asking a ton of questions along the way. And finally, you want to make sure to include important elements of a buyer-centric website like images and sticky tools. So thank you again for joining me on this presentation on buyer-centric websites. If you have any questions or you'd like to work together creating a buyer-centric website, you can contact me at valeriebarrow.com.